Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we're going to learn about the RSPB Big Schools Birdwatch, why it's important to do, and what it is, what you can learn. Before we get started with our special guest today, I have a small favor to ask you. I notice a lot of you are putting your names in the school chat and the lesson chat, your school name, and which class you're joining us from, and that's brilliant. Can I also ask, please, could you include your postcode? Because this will help our friends at the RSPB know who they're supporting today with this lesson. Today, we are very excited to be joined by Laura Elliott and Shona McClellan, who are going to tell us all about how you can take part in the RSPB Big Schools Birdwatch and why it's important to do so. So a huge thank you to both Laura and Shona for joining us today, and to our friends at RSPB Scotland for helping to make this lesson happen. Laura, if you would like to pop on and share your screen and get this lesson started, that'd be very exciting.
Perfect. I'll just do that now. There we go. That should be us sorted.
Thank you to everyone who's putting their postcodes in the chat too. That's very helpful. Thank you so much. Right, Laura?
Thank you.
Let's see what you have for us today.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our live lesson today. So my name, as Katrina said, is Laura, and I'm an Education, Families and Youth Officer for RSPB Scotland. So part of my role is to support some of our teams in Scotland who might be doing work with schools or families. And I don't very often get the chance to go into schools myself. So I'm very excited to be getting to join you in your classrooms here today. So joining me, I also have Shona, who is one of our community engagement officers, and she does get to work with families and schools. And she is based in the Outer Hebrides in a place called Lewis. And Shona is going to be helping to keep an eye on the chat for me today. So sometimes we'll ask you to pop some answers in the chat. And if you have any questions when we go through, do pop them in the chat as well. Shona might sometimes stop me when I'm talking about something and ask one of the questions, or if there's time at the end, we can have a wee look there. Now, just before I started, I did see that there was a message from Shona to say that her Teams had crashed. So hopefully she will make it on. She might still be trying to get back on, but we'll just carry on anyway. So today I'm going to be talking to you about an exciting survey we have coming up called the Big Schools Birdwatch. Now, before we talk about that, I just wanted to chat very briefly about who the RSPB actually are. So some of you might have heard of us and some maybe not. So the RSPB is a large conservation charity, and RSPB stands for the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds. And although it's only birds in our title, we actually help to protect all nature. We have lots of amazing nature reserves across the UK where we provide and take care of habitats for nature, but we also go out and work with communities, families and schools to help them experience and take action for nature in their local area. One of the ways you can take action is by participating in the Big Schools Birdwatch. So let's find out a bit more about what that actually is and how you can take part. So Big Schools Birdwatch is a citizen science survey, which means we ask members of the public to become scientists to help with our work. In this case, we are looking for school pupils, teachers, and any other adults working in your school to help us. We will be asking you and your school adults to go outside into your school grounds and count the different birds you can see. We'll talk in a minute about how to do that. But first, let's have a look at how you might work out what different birds are and some of the ones you are likely to see. So let's have a look at our first 4 birds that you might see on your Big Schools Birdwatch. Now, if you know any of these birds, do get your adults to pop them in the chat. And I'll ask Shona, if she's arrived, to tell me in a minute what your answers are. Now, I'm actually going to tell you one of them, and it's the bird at the top. So I want you to shout out loud after 3 if you know what that one is. You ready? 1, 2, 3. That's right, it's a robin. So a robin is often a bird we use to help us think about the size of birds. So that's the first way we can think about working out what a bird might be. So we can think about whether a bird is smaller than a robin, about the same size as a robin, or bigger than a robin. Now, if Shona has joined us, I wonder if we've had any other guesses for the other birds. I don't know if Shona is here yet. Perhaps not. Don't know, Katrina, are you able to see the chat? Have we had any guesses?
I can help. Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. We have lots of guesses. You wanted ones for the second bird, yes? We have lots of people guessing all of them. We have sparrow, pigeon, blue tit, robin, of course, wood pigeon. Those answers over and over again. Yeah.
I don't think anybody needs me here. It sounds like they're experts already.
I think so.
Well done. So you're absolutely right. So we had a blue tit, and our blue tit is a little bit smaller than a robin. We've got our house sparrow, who's about the same size as a robin. And then, of course, much bigger than a robin, we have our wood pigeon. So the next way we can try to identify a bird is by looking at the colours. So again, if you know any of these birds, do pop them in the chat. Now, our robin that we looked at had a really distinctive red breast, and our blue tit had lovely blue and yellow colours. And here's a few other birds with some interesting colours on them. So I wonder if we've got any guesses for these ones yet. Any coming in?
We're getting lots of guesses in. Lots of people not sure which bird they're guessing about, but it says seagull, pigeon, oyster catcher, chaffinch, black-headed gull, normal pigeon, magpie. Lots of people saying seagull and black-headed gull.
Okay. Oh, these are all fantastic guesses. So you're absolutely right. The first one is a chaffinch. So the male chaffinch has this lovely rust colour, and he also has white stripes on the wings and on the tail. And quite often with a chaffinch, you see them flying away, and at the back you'll see these 2 white stripes. So you can know that that one is a chaffinch. And then in the middle, we have what we call our feral pigeon. Now, they can tend to look a wee bit boring. Let's just be honest. They're a bit grey. But if you look a little bit closer, and you'll see on his neck, they have lovely green and purple, and it's this kind of really iridescent colour. So they are lovely. They've got some really nice colours on them. And our third one, like somebody did guess this, a black-headed gull. And this bird is the absolute master of disguise. Because although they're called a black-headed gull, you can see in the top picture, it's more of a chocolate brown colour. And that's what they look like in the summer. But in the winter, they completely change. They try to confuse us. They have a white head, like this bottom one. But the only way that you can tell that it's still a black-headed gull, even though it's got a white head, is if you look beside the eye, they have this kind of black splodge. Okay, so that is your clue that it's a black-headed gull in its winter plumage in disguise. So our next way for trying to work out what a bird is looking at their bill. Now, we've met these 2 birds already. We've got our robin and our house sparrow. And a bill on a bird or a beak will give us an idea of what that bird likes to eat. So our robins are ground birds, and they mostly eat insects. So they need this really sharp beak that they can stab at insects to eat them, because that's their favourite food. But For a house sparrow, you can see that they have quite a chunky bill, and this is because they like to eat seeds, and they need this really strong bill to be able to crunch and crack those seeds. And then we've got another two birds joining us that we've not met yet, so I wonder if we can get any guesses of those in the chat. And another way to try and work out what a bird is, it's really important to think about where you're seeing the bird and also what they might be doing, because these can give us clues as well. So I wonder if we've got any guesses coming in for these ones.
Quite a few. So far we have, for the first bird, we've got blackbird, crow, and yep, blackbird, magpie. And then other guesses, I'm thinking for the second bird are great tit, grey tit. A few people are guessing what the birds we already know are, or sparrow.
Oh, lots of good guesses there again. So as we've said, or we've seen, we've got a robin as the first bird, and the second one is a blackbird. It does look quite like a crow, and we will meet a crow later on, and we'll be able to look at what the differences are. So our robin and our blackbirds, as we've said with the robin, they like to be ground birds. Now, I have lots of blackbirds in my garden, and quite often what I see is not the blackbird to start with, but a whole host of leaves being thrown about all over the place. And that's because our blackbirds like to look under the leaves looking for insects for eating. So that gives us a bit of a clue. If you see a bird doing that, you can guess that it's most likely a blackbird. And in the winter time, you'll often see them in trees as well, because they go looking for berries to eat. And then our other two birds, we've met our blue tit already, and a great tit. And these two birds are most often seen in trees. And especially during the spring, they will be searching leaves on the trees for caterpillars to feed their young. And finally, we can also use our ears. This is a really important way to try and find out what a bird is. So again, we've got another two new birds here, so we can pop them in the chat if you have any ideas. But we just met the blackbird, and he loves to whistle. And I like to think of a blackbird when I hear it, a bit like a grandad pottering about in the garden and whistling away. So let's have a little listen to him. And then our robin is quite similar. So I think that the robin is a little bit like a grandchild. So we have the grandad blackbird and the grandchild robin, who is copying the blackbird. And they're a lot younger, so theirs is a bit more high pitched. So let's have a little listen to our robin. So you can hear it is quite similar, but the robin is a bit more high pitched. Now, we've already met our great tit, and they have a really, really distinctive call. And I always think about them shouting, teacher, teacher, teacher. So let's have a little listen to this one. You hear them shouting, teacher, teacher, teacher. Now, we've got another two new birds, as we've said, so I wonder if we've got any suggestions in the chat for those ones.
We do. We have lots of guesses for starling and lots of guesses for magpie and another guess for kingfisher.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I can see why you might have said kingfisher, because the one that's coming next, which is a starling, the kingfisher is quite the same way, like it sits up the same way. So yeah, that was a really, really good guess. But this one is actually a starling. And this fabulous bird does lots of beatboxing. So we're going to listen to him in a minute. And they also copy lots of sounds that they hear around them. So sometimes you might hear a bit of a car alarm in there. You might hear other birds as well. And I once heard what I thought was a buzzard, which is a bird of prey. And I sometimes get them flying over my garden, and I could hear this buzzard, and I was looking up in the sky, couldn't see it anywhere. And then I suddenly realized that it was actually a starling that was pretending to be a buzzard. And the reason that it decided to do this was there was a wood pigeon sitting on one of the aerials on the houses, and the starling clearly decided that they wanted to sit there, so was making the sound of a buzzard so that the wood pigeon would fly away. So they're quite cheeky birds as well. So let's have a little listen to what a starling sounds like. So quite an interesting sound, bit of chattering there, a bit of beatboxing, it's all quite varied. And then our last one, as lots of people said, this is a magpie. And just going back to colours, initially this one looks just like a black and white bird, but when you get the chance to see a magpie up close, they've got such amazing colours on their tail, lots of blues and greens and purples. So if you get a chance to see a magpie, do have a look for that. But let's have a listen to what this one sounds like. And you might recognise this. It sounds a bit like wooden castanet clapper instruments that you might have at school. So let's have a listen to this one. So quite a strange sound, that one as well. So in a minute, we are going to test all of those skills. So all the ones that I've just been speaking to you about, because I've got a mystery bird for you to try and identify. But before we do that, I wanted to let you see the ID sheet that will be available for you doing your Big Schools Birdwatch. And as you'll see, it has a list of all the birds we've met this afternoon, plus an extra one, and that's our carrion crow. And you can see how similar that one actually is to our blackbird. However, they're a lot bigger than our blackbird, and a blackbird has this nice orange bill, but our carrion crow has the black bill. So it's time to guess my mystery bird. So we've got our chart up here, and I'm going to give you some clues. And once you think you know, you can then pop your answer in the chat. So here we go. Here's the clues. I'm about the same size as a robin. I have a pointed bill. I like being in the trees looking for bugs to eat. My call sounds like this.
We have guesses coming in already.
Oh, my colours are green, yellow, black and white. Who am I? So we've got lots of guesses there.
We do. They started coming in after I like being in the trees looking for bugs.
Oh, okay.
And as soon as you played the bird call, they started pouring in.
I gave it away. Should have made it harder.
They've just been paying attention. That's good.
That is absolutely.
So we have lots of different ones. We have blue tit, house sparrow, great tit. Lots and lots for blue tit, lots for great tit. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much evenly divided between blue tit and great tit, and a few guesses for house sparrow.
Oh, good guesses, everyone. The answer was actually a great tit. So well done to everybody that said that. So remember that teacher, teacher, teacher sound. That's how to remember a great tit by sound. So now that we're all experts in identifying the birds we might see in our school grounds, let's focus on how we actually do the Big Schools Birdwatch. So as we've seen, there's an ID chart we can use to help us identify and record the birds. Now, what is really, really important is that when you're recording, you record the maximum number of birds you see at one time. So I'm going to explain this. So we're going to use our starling, our feral pigeons, and our black-headed gull to help us, so I can show you exactly what I mean by that. So here is our school playground. And oh, here comes in a starling. So on my ID sheet, I'm going to mark a starling. Then, oh, feral pigeon comes along. So we pop 1 beside feral pigeon. Ah, here's another starling. So we pop another line for starling. Oh, now one of our starlings has flown away. But we can still leave the mark there because we did see that starling, so that's all good. Another feral pigeon comes along, so we can mark that on. And here comes a black-headed gull, so let's mark that on our sheet. Now, a starling has come back in. Now, we don't know if that's the starling that flew away earlier. And as we're looking in our playground just now, we can still only see 2 starlings, and we've got 2 marks beside starling on our sheet. So we don't want to add another one in. Okay, so we're only counting the maximum number we see at one time. So we're going to try this again. And this time we're going to use our robins and our blue tits. They're going to be helping us. And this time I'm not going to be helping you. So you are going to have to watch very carefully and do it yourself. And then you can pop in the chat how many robins and how many blue tits you think we would mark on our sheet. Now just remember, it's the maximum number you can see at one time. Okay, we don't keep marking ones as they arrive. So you might want to grab a bit of paper, or you can use your fingers, or you could split your class in half. Some of you are looking for robins and some of you are looking for blue tits. Okay, are we ready? So let's watch very carefully and see what happens in our school playground. So how many robins and how many blue tits did we have? Remember, that's the maximum we saw at one time.
Lots of answers pouring in.
It's quite tricky. It is tricky to remember this.
Now, I was holding up fingers to count those. But it looks like most schools have the same answer, which is 4 robins and 2 blue tits.
Oh, aced it. Well done. Absolutely. 4 robins and 2 blue tits. So that is how we do the count, and it's really important to make sure we do it that way. And it's so that we don't count the same birds countless times, because birds like to fly about. They might fly, maybe somebody's got some food just over the back from your playground and they're constantly going there and then coming back all the time. So you could end up seeing the same bird 4 or 5 times. So it's just a way to try and make sure we only count each of the birds once. Now, doing the Big Schools Birdwatch is, of course, great fun, but it also provides the RSPB with really important information about how well or not our birds are doing. Now, we use a colour coding system for all the birds in the UK, and that tells us which birds are doing well and which need our help the most. So looking at the birds on our ID chart, we can see that some of our birds are labelled green, some are amber, and others are red. So a bit like a traffic light system. So our green ones mean that they are not currently of concern. We're okay at the moment with the numbers that are there for those birds. Our amber means that there's been a 25 to 49% decline in the UK breeding population over the last 25 years. So on our chart, our wood pigeon and black-headed gull fall into that category. And for red, this means at least a 50% decline in the UK breeding population over the last 25 years. So on our chart, that's our starlings and our house sparrow. And by getting the data from lots of schools that take part, we can monitor what birds are continuing to do well and if any are a cause for concern. And us knowing what birds you haven't seen is just as important as those you have seen, because it really helps us to monitor it. So I would like you to pop your hand up if your class or school have already signed up to do the Big Schools Birdwatch and be scientists for us. And also put your hand up if you would like to sign up. Oh, I'm sure there's lots of hands up there. Fantastic. Well, it's really easy to get involved. So all you need to do is ask your school adults to register your school on our website. Now I've popped a QR code here to make it super simple, or you can just type RSPB Big Schools Birdwatch into a search engine, or I think we're going to have the link on the Eco Schools website, or you can look on RSPB's website. Loads of ways to find it. Once you've registered, you'll be able to download ID sheets, so the one that you saw already, and there's some other resources as well. So we've got some new ones this year. There's ones that have a list of all different blackbirds so that you can work out which one is which. There's one that's all focusing on gulls, so you can learn the different types of gulls. So lots of resources to help you. And you can go and get counting right now. So between now and the 14th of February. So it's about 3 weeks if you've got a February break, or if not, about a month. So plenty of time to get the survey done. And then we need all your results back to us at the RSPB. You can enter them online. We need them by the 24th of February. So still lots of time to get involved. And if you enjoy the Big Schools Birdwatch, well, this is actually one of the activities that form our wider Wild Challenge Awards. And our Wild Challenge Awards involve undertaking activities that let you experience nature and then take action for it in your school grounds. And by undertaking these activities, you can earn bronze, silver and gold certificates. Our experience in nature activities include identifying wildlife tracks and signs, going on mini beast and bug safaris, or looking up close at nature. And our taking action for nature activities include growing wildlife friendly plants for moths, undertaking the Big Schools Birdwatch that we've just been speaking about, and other wildlife surveys too, and also building a mini beast hotel. In order to get each certificate, you need to complete 3 activities from each category. So 3 from experiencing and 3 for taking action for nature. So if this is of interest to your school, again, there's a handy QR code there. You can use that to register, or again, go onto our website or type it into Google, Wild Challenge Schools, and you'll be able to find all the information. So that is it for me. Now, if there's time and if there are any questions, I will try my best to answer them. But if you do think about a question later on, then these are my details. You are more than welcome to drop me an email. I always love getting questions about wildlife. So do feel free to send me any questions that you might have.
That was brilliant, Laura. Thank you. Mrs. McAllister's class had a question about the birdwatch, and they've asked, how do you use the results to help birds?
So yeah, that is a fantastic question. So as I was saying, the results of that, we look and it helps us to see which birds are doing well and any that might not be doing well. And we also, alongside the Big Schools Birdwatch, we have another birdwatch that's called the Garden Birdwatch. And so families and adults can get involved in that. And that's just over a weekend that's at the end of January. And we collate all the results together and have a look at what we get. And we can then work out which birds might not be doing so well. So for example, I know that our green finches aren't doing so well just now. and there is a disease that's affecting them that it's to do with sometimes with bird feeders. If there's leftover food, it badly affects these birds. So because we know this, what we do is at RSPB, we're giving out lots of information to our supporters, telling them how to properly clean their bird feeders. And that's a way to just help these birds. And we look at the bird feeders that we're selling as well in our shops to make sure they're ones that are going to help these birds. So yeah, please believe me, your results are really, really important. And it's a much bigger picture that we look at. So thank you so much for that question. That was a fantastic question to ask.
We have a couple more.
Oh.
Mrs. Sinclair's class wants to know what your favorite bird is.
Oh, that is the most difficult question of all. Oh my goodness, what would be my favourite bird? Well, of the ones that are on your chart, the ID chart, let me think, what would be my favourite? I think a blue tit. I do like a blue tit, and I have lots of blue tits in my garden. And quite often we have blue tits that nest in our garden as well. So I think that's probably why they're my favourite. But of birds overall, my favourite has to be a puffin. Who doesn't love a puffin? Got to love them. So, yep. Oh,
that's
that was
my
a tricky
favorite bird
question.
too. I like the noises they make. They sound very
definitely. Yeah.
We have more questions coming in. Miss Barry's class wants to know, do birds have to land in order to count them?
Oh, now that is a very good question. And actually, you've reminded me that I never mentioned that. So good question. Yes, they have to land. So they have to come onto the ground, or they could be on a fence or on a roof. You can claim them as yours if they land on a roof, but we're not counting birds that just fly overhead. Okay, so if you see lots of geese flying overhead, sadly, we can't add them onto our count. Such a shame, I know. But yes, only ones that land, could be on the ground, could be scurrying about in your school bins, whatever. But yes, only the ones that actually come into our playground.
Brilliant. And Ms. Johnston says that one of her pupils, Fiona, would like to know how many species of birds there are in Scotland, if you know.
Oh, now you're really putting me on the spot with that one. There are a lot. Off the top of my head, I think it's around about 245, but I can try and confirm that. I don't have the answer to hand, but that is certainly a really good question, and I'll see if I can find out the answer to that. So yeah, good question.
And sticking with Ms. Johnston's class, Alice would like to know, what is your favorite bird call?
Oh, favourite. Well, I do have a favourite bird call, and it's a bird called a corncrake. And I'll tell you why it's my favourite bird call. So last year, I did a lot of work with the team who were doing a project called corncrake calling. And this is a bird that's in huge decline. You used to get them all over the UK, but you now only get them in the Outer Hebrides. And I had the chance last year to go and visit the team in the Outer Hebrides. And it was during the time of year when you can get corncrakes. Now, I was warned, I told the team, I'm only coming if I can hear a corncrake. And I was warned, Laura, look, it's really unlikely you'll hear it. You only hear them in the middle of the night. You know, you'll be very lucky if you do. And when I was over there, I heard a corncrake, and I was with my family at the time, and they were laughing at me because I was so excited to hear this bird, because I'd heard so much about it, learned so much about it, and to actually hear it was amazing. So yes, that is a really personal one for me. That's why it's my favourite bird call.
Oh, that's
good
brilliant.
Question.
I think we have a couple of minutes left for a few more questions. There's a couple of related questions here.
Okay.
We're being asked, which are the most endangered birds in Scotland, and also which is the most commonly found bird in Scotland? And also, do we have birds like hawks?
Okay, Right, lots of questions there. So our most endangered birds, again, off the top of my head, I don't know the answer to that. However, all of the birds that are on our red list, these are the ones that are in the most decline. So they are going to be our ones that we are most concerned about. So any of the ones on that list, yeah. But yeah, things like our corncrake that I mentioned, they are really, I mean, as I said, we used to get them all over the UK and now we only get them in small pockets in the Outer Hebrides. So yes. What was our next one? Sorry.
The most popular bird. The most common bird, I'm guessing. The most popular
Most
species.
common
Yeah, the most
bird.
commonly found
Oh,
one.
okay. So again, it's going to be something like our pigeons. We see pigeons everywhere. And what we find is the birds that are most common, these are ones that are able to survive in lots of different habitats. They've kind of adapted well. And what we're finding as well, that there's lots of birds that are increasing that are able to make use of the bird seeds that we put in our gardens. So we have our top 10 birds when we're doing the garden bird watch. And what we're finding is ones that are able to take advantage, like our great tits, they're able to take advantage of our bird seed. They are moving up the charts of birds.
I think we'll have one last question, and there's a few more, but I'll send them to you.
Yeah,
and maybe
definitely.
You can answer the rest because I'd like to know the answer for sure. But this one from Pinewood School in West Lothian, they say that last week they saw a Eurasian oyster catcher, and they'd like to know why this bird is in Scotland.
Oh, well, an oyster catcher, there's lots of great food for an oyster catcher. Now, oyster catcher's got a huge, big, long bill. And the great thing about that is when they go to the beach, you quite often see them at the coast, or you can sometimes see them on farmland as well. They're really good at using their beak to go right down through the ground and get their food there. So that is why we have lots of oyster catchers, because there's plenty of food for them to eat.
So we've got lots of other questions about emotions in birds and why they chirp and all kinds of other questions. I am going, if you have any more while we finish up here, I will write them out and send them to you, Laura and Shona, because I bet there's some pretty fascinating answers in there, but we're almost out of time. So, I mean, I would love to sit here all afternoon and ask Laura questions about birds. You'll have to come back again because obviously there's a good appetite for information about birds from our audience and, well, from me. So thank you so much, Laura, for sharing everything you've done with us today. I really appreciate you answering so many questions and sharing your favorite birds and, you know, showing us how to do the bird watch. It's so important because RSPB can't get everywhere to do their surveys. And so citizen science from you guys is very, very important. I wanted to make a connection with Eco Schools because a lot of schools here today have joined us because they're working toward their Green Flag Award. We have an example action plan here to help you plan out your RSPB Big Schools Birdwatch and link it to your Eco Schools work. The action plan also includes some ideas to help you support birds and all of the species that they depend on, like insects and all kinds of plant seeds in your school grounds and also at home too. Some of these activities have been taken from the RSPB Wild Challenge Award, which Laura was telling us about earlier, which is a very good fit with your Eco Schools Green Flag Award, and you can use that as evidence for the biodiversity or school grounds topics for your next Green Flag application. Please do share photos of your bird watch, maybe birds that you've seen in your school grounds and how you're supporting birds. You can find us on social media, most social media platforms at KSB Scotland. And we also very much value your feedback on our live lessons. Your feedback from pupils and from teachers both helps us to make our lessons better and also helps us to know what subjects you might want to do in the future. So if you wouldn't mind, please complete this very, very short, I promise, very short feedback form to tell us what you enjoyed and maybe what you'd like to see more of. My colleague Nicola has put the link in the chat there. And please include in your feedback what you thought of the resources that accompany this lesson or any other lesson that you have been participating in. Speaking of lessons, We have 4 lessons coming up. The first one is bats are cool. So if you like birds, maybe you'll also like bats. My colleague Arlo is very excited to tell you more about bats and echolocation and how to care for bats. We have Spring Clean Week coming up in March, Natural Scotland Week in May, and sustainable celebrations also toward the end of May. But thank you so much to all of you in school for joining us today. And thank you so much, Laura and Shona, for joining us from the RSPB. Please remember to keep your questions coming in, but that's all we have time for today. So bye for now.